This was not supposed to be a YouTube video. If you go back to my PowerApps crash course on Udemy, it was supposed to be a beginner level course, but kind of questions that I got on that course brought me to the idea that yes, these are the things that people are asking for. At the same time, it's so hard to squeeze this content in between the course and add it to the lecture without breaking the consistency of the topics in that course. So what I did, I added the last section to that course called bonus material. The bonus is something like this: questions that my students asked me on Udemy about the topics that they are not included in the course. And if I see there is enough interest, I decided to add lectures once in a while to that very last section to cover something like this. Components. Yes, inside that course, we had a brief reference to the components and how it works in PowerApps, but I got lots of questions about that. And finally, I came to the point that I need to have a lecture added to that course to cover the components and how to work with them inside PowerApps. And here's the lecture. Without wasting time and going through any PowerPoint slides or something like that, I'd rather create a quick component, add it to the screen, and then go through the details and how we can work, customize, and control its behavior. So let me just click on Create, and I want to create a new Canvas app. I want to call it Component Demo. It's a tablet, and I click on Create. The project is created, but that screen is not my concern. I want to go to the components, and very quickly I want to create a component. This component, let me give it a name. For example, rename it. I call it component underscore add numbers. All right. So on this component, I want to add two text boxes. And when the user adds numbers to these text boxes, it should calculate the sum of those numbers here. It's something very basic, but gives us enough material to work with it. To make this guy look something reasonable, I go to the plus and I want to add a rectangle. And this rectangle, let it be the header of this component. Cool is that? All right. And right here, I add a text label. And I click this text label here. I want to put it on the top of this guy. And the text is going to be add numbers. Maybe increase the font size a little bit. 16 maybe, not bad. And let me change the color. Scroll down, font color. And I want to make it white so it stands out here. Maybe I can make it also bold here. And that's it. So I have a reasonable component that looks half decent. We increase the font to 20. Looks better. Oh gosh, this is too big now. That's okay. All right. So we have our component here. Let me also change the fill color so it stands out when I add it to the screen. Let me just put, for example, this color. Oh gosh, this is too invisible. All right, this is better. So I have a component with a title, and inside it, I add two text inputs. One of them is going to be first number, and the other one is going to be the second number. And right under these guys, I want to add a text label that calculates the sum of these two numbers. So this one, let me call it txt number 1. The other one is going to be txt underscore number 2. For the first one, the default text is going to be a 0. The text format, I want to make it number. Second one, I do exactly the same thing. So the default value is 0, and it is number, right? And for the value that this text label, and I call it LBL underscore result should show, the text value for this is going to be txt num1.text plus txt num2.text, right? And it shows me 0. Great. So we have something like this, very basic control that should add numbers. So let me just save it. I just accept the name and I click on save. There we go. I go back to my project. Now let's bring it to the screen and test it. So I come back here and I go to the screens. And now I have a component that if I click on this plus, I can scroll down to this custom, and comp add numbers is here. So drag and drop it here, and we have this component here. Gosh, it is too big. All right. It is okay now. So I have a component like this. Let me just make it smaller a little bit. And not only that, I can have actually more than one instance of this component here. If I want to add another one here, I have the second one here, and they work totally independently, right? And there we go. Okay, let's test it. I just save it again, and I click on run. So this one I can put 2, and I can put 5 here. It gives me the sum here. This one I can also make it, for example, 10, and I make 20. 30 is the sum, and I'm happy. So far, it was easy, but just working with it. We didn't talk about what's going on backstage, but there was a little bit of intention here. By intention, I added 2 controls here, 2 controls of the same component to one screen, or even multiple screens, just to get into the concept that is going on behind it and the questions that I'm getting here and there. Let's answer all of them in one shot. If you are a developer and you come back from the old age object-oriented development and any object-oriented programming language, this should be very familiar to you. We were talking about the blueprint and the house, or the blueprint and the object. So basically, if you want to have a house, in this case, our control on the screen, I mean, either one of them, we need a blueprint. So we give this blueprint to the engineers, to the contractors, to the builder companies, and they say, okay, fine, we take this and we make this one for you. In this case, in our example, the PowerApps engine is that company that gets the blueprint and builds it, which brings us to this idea that we have a blueprint, which is actually where we create a component, and every time we add an instance of that component to one screen or multiple screens, we have a new house or a new control on our app. And yes, but who cares? We just created that and it worked, right? Now, let me bring this idea to life. Let me bring this theory into our app and see what it gives us. If I go back inside this app, let's say I want to pass this value 7 or this return value, and I want to show it somewhere on my screen. So let's assume that I don't know anything about properties, and the first thing that comes to my mind that, all right, let me go back here inside this component, right? And when a button is pressed, for example, let me add the button here, insert, right? There we go. Just drag it down here. So when someone clicks on it, it should get this sum and put it in a global variable that can be reached anywhere in the app, correct? Okay. So I say btn underscore sum. The text is going to be sum, right? And when someone clicks on it, let's use set. I create a variable called adding underscore result. And this adding result is going to have the value that I have in this label, right? LBL result.text. Fantastic. We did that, right? Okay. Very simple. Very nice. Let me just go back to my screens and let's run this, as you can see, the sum is presented here. And if I click on this, this value should automatically get into that sum, correct? Cool. So now let's see what has happened here. If I want to put a label here on this screen, not inside this control, on this screen, let's say label, and it's supposed to show me the value that we calculated here. So basically, we put this value inside this adding result, right? I get a copy of it. And if I go to my screen and if I want to show it here, this is too big. Oh gosh, okay. All right, and instead of text, I would say, show me the adding result. Whoops, it did not recognize it. What are we missing? We defined a global variable here. We used set. We didn't use update context. Maybe it didn't put the value inside it. Okay, let's put another label here. And this label should show me the value. LBL underscore adding result. So basically, it should show me anything that goes into that variable. And for the text property of this, let me show you this value here. So now let's save it. It's a little bit upset because if I go to the screen, you see in this guy, I put this adding result, which doesn't make any sense. But if I just run this, you see it shows me the 7. Let me just calculate again. 23, it becomes 28. But when I click on sum, which asks the component to put this value into that global variable, this one is happy. But hold on a second, this one doesn't show anything, right? But if I click on sum, it shows me this 30 number, which brings us to the point that, hold on a second, what happened to the concept of global variable? For this one, this global variable has 28. For this guy, this global variable shows me the value 30. How can they be different? Aren't they global? And this is the reason that I was avoiding using components in the course that was basically designed for beginners. Anyway, now let's get into it and see what's going on. When we are talking about one control and another control, whatever you define inside it, it works just like an independent component or just another independent app. So whatever that you define inside it, it is completely protected. Everything stays inside it. It's just like a house that the doors are locked and you can only see what you're supposed to see out of it. Yes, you can enter values, but if you want to bring these values out of this control, it's not just, okay, from inside the house, put it inside a global variable, and that global variable can be defined everywhere in the app, and we can reach there. I'm afraid it doesn't work that way, or I'm so glad that it doesn't work that way. Would have been a complete mess. And this brings us to the custom properties. If we want to exchange some values between a component and a host application, we need to define properties. And these properties should be predefined either as input or output. What that means is that if you want to send some values from the component to the app, just like the values that we have here, and we want to show it somewhere outside, for example here, we need to define output properties. So output property basically can output the values from the component to the hosting app. And the opposite way, if you want to send some values from the app to the inside of the component, we need to specify input properties. Now, let's define an example of every single one of them. For this one, let's define an input property first, which in my opinion is a little bit easier. Let's give a chance to the user to change the color of this header, or maybe a title for this header. Everything that the hosting app or the hosting screen can send to this component. To do that, we go back to the component definition. On the first screen of these component, on the properties, not on the advanced, you see custom properties that at the moment we don't have anything. But if I click on new custom property, I can define a new property and I call it title color. Of course, I don't need to make it one word. I can put space in between them, but the actual name that I want to refer it to should not have a space. So it should be one word. Great. This one makes it user-friendly. This one makes it code-friendly. We can have a description for it, a custom property. I don't want to get there, but this one, because we want to send something from the app to the component. So basically we add a component, and from inside the screen, I want to tell the component how to change or what to set as the color of the header. We need to define an input property. So we say property type is input. Now, when it comes to data type, there's a huge list. In this case, we need color. And that's it. I click on create, and we are good. So we did one part. We created a property called title color. Now, the only thing is that we need to come back here. Oops. Okay. And for this rectangle that we created, I need to set the fill color to the color that I'm getting from that property. And how do I do that? Easy. The fill color of this guy, at the moment, it's a hard-coded value. I can say, make it the color that I defined for the component, which is the container. So the parent of this rectangle, which is the actual component, dot title color, is a color that I can get from the hosting screen because it's an input parameter, right? So let me just save it. And I go back to my screen again. At the moment, it doesn't have any values. But right here, if I pick any one of them, there's a title color. I can click on it, and I can set the title to red. Not only that, because they are totally independent, I can pick the second one. I can change the title color to something different, like this color. Great. So this way, we can have input values from outside to the inside of the component. How about from inside to the outside? I guess you can do it yourself. Let's go quickly. So for this one, again, I pick the component. I click on New Custom Property. This one is going to be the sum result. And as you can see, it removes the spacing between them. This time, the property is going to be the output, and the value, it can be text or it can be number. I pick number because it is more specific. And I click on Create. And here, now inside this app, I can pick some result, and I can say the value that you're going to return instead of 100, which is just dummy value inside it, let it be the LBL result.text. I just save it and done, right? So whatever that comes from here, it's automatically mapped to this sum result. Let's see if it really works. So I go to the screen and I try to find my label here. And let's say this label should show the value for this component. The name of this component is comp add numbers _ 1, right? So I pick this label under it, and I can say comp add numbers _ 1 dot, and you can find the sum result in the properties of that component now. Done, and it shows me the value. Let me just save it, and I run it again. And this time, let me add something here. And in real time, it shows me that because I didn't even map it to that variable, although we could map it to the same variable that we did. Let me show you here. So here, instead of sum result, instead of binding it to the label, I can map it to that variable that we created here, adding result, right? So this guy can have adding result as a variable, and I just save it, and I get exactly the same result. The only thing is that that variable is assigned when the sum button is pushed. So let me just go back here to the screens. We run it again. And this time I change it, for example, to 40. You see the number becomes 63, but this value does not change until I push this sum button and it shows me the value of 63 because the variable is assigned when the button is pressed. Now you see why when I come here, when I click on any one of these items, I cannot really move it. I can move the entire component, but I cannot remove one of them. Can we actually put this button here for this control and this button in a different location? Absolutely, you can do it. Again, you need to set custom properties. Let me show you that quickly. So I go back to my components again. All I can do is that, let me put this guy a little bit lower. I need to create another custom property, which is going to be input, and it's going to be sum label X. And this is going to be input, and the value is going to be number, right? And for the sum, if I click on here, I can pick the X property, and I would pick parent dot sum label X, and it puts it in the location which by default has 100, which is fine. I save it, and now if I go back to my screen again, let me make it a little bit smaller. For this one, I have sum label X. Let me make it, for example, 20. And for this one, let me make it like 300. And this way, you can have multiple controls with multiple properties, and that property can be different from instance to instance. I think this is all you needed to know about components and how to work with it in PowerApps. And now you can create components and work with them in PowerApps. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was the only video that leaked from my Udemy bonus lectures to YouTube. Typically, I'm not going to publish them on YouTube because of some of the restrictions that we have with Udemy, specifically for the Udemy for Business courses. But if you have enrolled for PowerApps Crash Course on Udemy, for the future bonus videos that I will upload to the course, I will send everybody a notification, so keep an eye on the Udemy announcement for the future lectures that are added to the course that you have already enrolled. Thank you for watching and have a great day.